Policy Research Associates presents a panel discussion of Trueblood class members and peers conducted at the 2019 Trueblood Diversion Services Summit, held in Seattle, Washington.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, great. So my name is Daria Farivar. I work at Disability Rights Washington. I am the Community and Legislative Liaison. Now, what that means to me is my role is to make sure that Trueblood class members have a way to meaningfully engage in this whole process that we're going through, be it with diversion, be it with advocacy, however that they want to engage with this, I am there to facilitate that. Now with that, I meet a lot of really, really wonderful people as we go through it. I've met a lot of really wonderful peers as well who have been supporting Trueblood class members. So I'm going to take a minute and introduce our panelists, but before I do that, I'll let you know kind of how we'll run this panel today.
The panel includes 3 individuals seated at a table beside the podium with 1 individual standing at the podium. The individual standing at the podium moderating the discussion is Daria Farivar from Disability Rights Washington. The 3 panelists seated at the table are Ronnie Batchelor, a certified peer counselor at Lourdes Health Services, Debbie Kirby, a certified peer counselor and recovery coach at the Thurston Mason Behavioral Health Organization, and Joshua Steller, a Trueblood class member and advocate.
Excellent. So we will start with Ronnie. Ronnie, raise your hand. That's Ronnie. Ronnie Batchelor is a peer... Ronnie Batchelor is a peer specialist with Lourdes Health Network. Her work with peers has encompassed a network of community partnerships, creating a coalition of like-minded advocates, agencies, and organizations. She uses these relationships to help her support other peers in her work. Ronnie is also on the board of directors at Columbia Basin ACH, representing the consumer sector. She's an active member of the Peer Steering Committee with the Office of Consumer Partnerships. She holds a certificate as a community health worker and for trauma-informed care and adult mental health first aid. Ronnie is also an LGBTQI advocate and volunteer for 4 years in her community as a leadership action team member for the Pride Foundation. That's Ronnie. Next, we have Josh. Josh, raise your hand. Josh Steller is a proud Trueblood class member with lived experience in Washington's criminal justice system, a former inmate at Chelan County Jail and a former patient at Eastern State Hospital. He hopes to share his experience to both educate the public about the criminalization of mental illness and to be a voice for others who have found themselves in similar traumatic circumstances. He strives to be an advocate for people subjected to criminal prosecution resulting from their disability and to prevent what happened to him from ever happening to people with mental illness again. And that's Josh. And last but not least, we have Debbie Kirby. Debbie, raise your hand. Debbie Kirby is a peer support specialist with the Olympic Health and Recovery Services in the Trueblood program of Thurston Mason counties in Washington State. Debbie invites her class members into the recovery process through a shared understanding and mutual respect of the journey. She uses her experience in recovery from mental health disorders and substance use disorder to come along class members and walk through their rugged terrain of rebuilding. This is done through, but not limited to, advocacy, linking to community partners, skill building, mentoring, and goal setting. Debbie has 30 years experience in assisting others in the recovery process of eating disorders, 20 years, 20 years experience with mental health disorders, and 10 years experience with substance use disorder and shoplifting addictions. And that's Debbie. Excuse me. So as you can tell, we really have a wealth of knowledge with us today, and I'm really excited for you all to hear from our panelists about what the role of a peer is like and what the experience of a class member is. Excuse me. It's clearly the morning. So to start today and to start this panel, I really want to ground us in the experience of a class member. The reason we're here is to stop people from becoming class members, stop the decriminalization of mental illness, and to support our class members in the journey to recovery. So to begin, Josh, can you tell us a little bit about how your story began and where you're at now? I know your experience and the start of your journey is very similar to what many class members experience, but the ending is a little bit different, or rather, where you're at now is a little bit different. Could you share on that?
In December of 2014, I began to experience psychosis. Voices that were very frightening. And for 10 months, up until October 11th, the day that I was arrested, I was on a downward spiral. The alcoholism was unbelievable. And at some point during this psychosis, I had written a journal entry or a note during a blackout, and this note was discovered by my family after I was exhibiting some behavior at a family birthday party. They entered my apartment after I'd gone to work. Somehow, miraculously, I was still employed. And they found this note. It contained a list of names referred to by the police as a manifesto. It had a list of names, some violent terminology, and so they called the mental health crisis line. They were aware that this was a mental health issue. And the crisis line responder was told by her boss to call the police instead. So the police came, confiscated the note along with some other property without search warrants. And my mother pleaded with them. Pardon me just a second. Pleaded with them, saying that my son is psychotic and he is not doing well. He needs help. He needs to go to a hospital. And the officer said he understood, but the only way, and I'm quoting here, the only way that Josh is going to get the mental health help that he needed was to be arrested and charged excessively, which is exactly what happened. So I was arrested on the job at work. I worked as a caregiver for developmentally disabled adults. And I was escorted from my client's home, put in handcuffs, and taken to the station. I was coherent enough to plead the Fifth Amendment, which I did, and then I was taken to jail. My memory of the entire experience, in particular my incarceration, is very foggy because of the psychosis and the ineffective medication that I was given. Ultimately, the Chelan County prosecutor charged me with 7 counts of first-degree attempted murder. It's a Class A felony. If I was convicted of that would have been a life sentence in prison up to for each count. So my public defender ultimately informed the prosecutor towards the end of my stay. This is after over a year in jail in a solitary confinement cell. He informed the prosecutor that the evidence was seized illegally, and the prosecutor basically caved and said, "Okay." My lawyer suggested a plea deal of not guilty by reason of insanity for 7 counts of felony harassment, which I took out of desperation to get out of that jail cell, because that was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. So I pled not guilty by reason of insanity and a maximum commitment date at Eastern State Hospital of up to 5 years. And within 3 months of my stay at Eastern, I was symptom-free. They finally, for the first time, found the correct medications, and they have my admiration and respect for that. So I was symptom-free 3 months into my stay out of a total of 1 year and 5 months at Eastern. So the remainder of the time that I was at Eastern was trying to convince or to try and convey to the treatment providers there that I was sane, I was sane. And I had to hire an expensive but very, very, very talented attorney who was the one to get me out of Eastern. I was on conditional release, which is mental health parole, we can call it, until May 14th of this year. And then I received my final discharge. So.
Josh, before we move on, I just want to say thank you for being here and for sharing your story, and acknowledge how courageous you have been in willing to share your story and willing to really share what it's like and what you've been through. So thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Whew. So a lot of things happened along the way for you, right?
Yes.
It was a very long process as well. What do you think was the most helpful and also least helpful thing that happened along this journey?
I could talk for 2.5 hours about that, so I'll just try and let's see. Of course, it is helpful to have the family support that I have, which unfortunately not all, perhaps very few of our class members have such support. So that goes without saying, but and also this is very important, is to have very, very good legal representation, counsel. And unfortunately, many public defenders are so overloaded and not quite knowledgeable of this system. So, but the least helpful was the fact, going all the way to the beginning, is falling into the criminal justice system, which takes place in some occasions for the mental health system here in our state. I did not commit a crime. It is evident by the note that was discovered that perhaps at some point I thought about committing a crime. But so to have the criminal record, and also upon the conditional release, for me to have to report monthly to the Department of Corrections and be subject to drug tests and have restrictions on my travel, the inability to go outside of the county that I resided in at the time. It's very stressful, and because I have a fear of the authority figures, law enforcement, and particularly the jail guards at the Chelan County Jail, it just doesn't help to have to report to somewhere that convicted felons, people on parole from prison, people on probation have to report to. So that certainly is not helpful for somebody that's just trying to recover and move on and regain their identity.
I just also want to add and share a little bit of Josh's resiliency. During this time that Josh was on conditional release, he was so motivated and so driven to continue to share his story and do advocacy for Trueblood class members that he actually came down to Olympia a couple times, I think, to share that story and to really show what it's like to be a class member. So I want to say thank you again for that. Now, we're also here to talk about peers and peers' role in the recovery process. So, Josh, to my knowledge, you did not have the support of a peer during this process, right? Do you think that could have changed your experience? And do you have any idea of how it could have changed your experience?
I really don't have a full understanding of a peer's role, but from what I do know, it is somebody with experience in the situation or in the circumstances that I was subject to. But I believe that if I had a peer from the very beginning, perhaps this person could have been an advocate for me and could have given me choices, suggestions on what I should do. Because a problem that I had was that I was mentally ill to the point that I did not know how to ask for help. And perhaps a peer could have made a large difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, lucky for you, we have two peers on this panel who can maybe give us a little insight into what that could have and really should have looked like. Ronnie and Debbie, as two Trueblood peers, you engage in two different parts of the class member's experience, just based on the two different programs that you're in. But can you talk a little bit about what you see as your role in the recovery journey and supporting class members? Either one of you. I'll get you the one.
You're saying go ahead?
Yes.
I'll go ahead. Thank you, Debbie. So, okay, can you guys, you guys can hear me perfectly. So in my role, I come alongside people to support them in their journey. It's not about me, it's about them. And it's about their needs. I try to build a relationship that's a working relationship, but also a closeness where there's this common thread that we find. And we use that as a partnering thread. Once that's established and a relationship established, the trust begins. Once that trust begins, there's things that will be disclosed to me that won't be disclosed to anyone else. And I covet that information because that's a trust. You don't break that. It's kind of like a friendship, but it's not, because it's on a professional level. And they understand that separation, but still you get to the heart and the meat of what's really going on. And so then we discover ways to find resolve for those things that are in the way. And we break down barriers. Sometimes we open doors and hold them for them to walk through. Sometimes we kick them down and then we tell them, come on, let's go. I liken myself to Alice in Wonderland, in the essence that I'm the white rabbit. Come on, Alice, get in, let's go for a ride, because I'm a mobile outreach person. And when I'm on the road with my client, we talk about everything. We laugh, we carry on conversations, things that probably I shouldn't hear, but I hear it anyway. But I'm not in judgment. I'm holding hope for them. I'm showing them that this can be done. And whatever is seemingly impossible, we make possible. Because I think outside of the box, because they're inside of a box. And so I just try to bring them along. And once they're there, they're making their decisions. This is about their recovery. It's about their journey. It's not about me. It's not about my expectations. We always think about some expectations, and we set those for other people. Stop doing that. Don't expect anything. Let them make the expectations for themselves and help them get there. They'll get up and over faster.
Okay. My process is very similar, of course, Ronnie, because us peers share common experiences with our class members. One of the things that we try to form a partnership, and with that, I share pieces of my story that are relevant to that peer. And in that way, we start building a relationship. We have a common understanding. And of course, that relationship is key because I am holding their information and it's private. And when I get to know my peers, there's a lot of information exchanged. And with that information, I also share different parts of my story as I get to know them more and more. It's like peeling an onion. at first we meet and we have our, pleasantries, and then we start talking about real stuff. And we get down into what's really going on. It is pure choice and voice. It's not about me. It's about their journey. If they ask me for suggestions, I give them multiple options, but it's always about their journey, because if I interject what they should be doing or what could happen, I'm robbing them of their decision. So it is a partnership. We do come alongside our peers, and we're vulnerable. I'm very vulnerable with my peers because I want them to be vulnerable with me and explore the options. A lot of times peers don't know what they can and cannot do. And so we have that information, what can be done, what programs they can access, what help is out there for them.
So if it wasn't already clear, it's become quite clear by the explanations that you two have given that peers are really unlike any other role we have in our healthcare system. Given that, to both of you, so what do you think is the most surprising thing about your role? Thing that nobody would think is a part of your role, but is? Either one of you.
What's surprising about my role is that I kind of, I get into the intimacy relationship with my peers. But as of that, I use humor because most peers have dealt with a lot of trauma. There's a lot of trauma. There's trauma added by the incarcerations, the incidences that happened. And I try to use a lighter attitude towards, not towards their trauma, but actually towards what they can and cannot do. And oftentimes they think it's unachievable. They lost everything. Most of these peers have nothing. Most of these peers have no family support system whatsoever. They have no money. They're homeless. And they have no hope. And so, along with that, I try to engage them in the process, but make it somewhat fun to be engaged in the process.
What's surprising about this role is that I got hired. And I have a wonderful boss. Happy birthday, boss. So it was like that's a common thread that we have too. We both have birthdays today. Happy birthday, and bless you for everything you've done for me in this job. I knew him out on the street when I was out doing community events. And he sought me out trying to figure out where I was working. So my other boss, or my supervisor, came to me and said that they have somebody looking for me, and his name is Cameron. And so I went over and talked to him, and they hired me. But the most surprising thing about this role for me is that my life experience is what gets me through the door. And I was the bad kid growing up. I was the kid that got into fights. I was the kid that suffered all the trauma, the drama, the beatings. I was the kid that was running from the cops, beating cops up. And now I'm working with them. And they respect me. They call me on the phone and they say, hey, this is what's going on with one of your peers. I get a call from Lourdes Counseling Center from the inpatient unit, and hey, we got one of your peers here and we don't know what to do. So I'm like, okay, let me get in my car. I'll be right there. No, you don't have to come. You can talk to him on the phone. I said, no, I'd rather see him in face, in person, because it goes a long way when you meet with them on the floor, on the transitions floor or the inpatient floor. They seem to do better. They get more calm, and my peers trust me. So the most surprising thing is that I get keys to the palace and I get to go see my friends. Other than that, I think that I've been doing this work all my life because I always hung out with the bad kids. I'm always willing with advice or, hey, can I talk to you about this or can I talk to you about that? That's not surprising to me. What's surprising is that I get the respect. I get to do things that I never thought I would be able to do. And I love this work, and I have a very big passion for this work because I get to help people like Josh. You're welcome.
Let me just say that your programs are so lucky to have the two of you as peer support specialists, and we, I think, all really appreciate all the work you do to support our class members. We also know that peer support is very hard work. And I imagine you two take a lot of pride in your program participants' success or class members' success. And I know you're just absolutely bursting and probably want to tell all of your stories right now. But I'm going to ask you to tell one story, one success story, which highlights the unique role of peers. Can you pick just one?
You get to go.
Yeah, I can pick one. I met this class member during the worst time of his life. He was homeless for 3 years, living in his car. And honestly, because of his substance use disorder, it took him places he just never thought he'd go. And as we engaged in the process of, getting him out and getting him released and get his, we as peers are kind of like their partner because we pick them up, we help them get involved in the mental health system, turn on benefits that they might have, explore if they can work or not work, SSI if that's an option. And basically, this individual had no idea of the terrain that, applying for SSI or what I do with mental health. He's never been in mental health services. And often, most peers use substances to get outside their head. They want to feel better. They have to do something to feel better. And this individual, used to forget, all the trauma he's been through. So with this individual, he's a success because this individual never had a place to stay. He would hop from couch to couch and then finally ended up in his car for 3 years. Now this individual is doing well in another diversion program. Going to graduate in 2020, August of 2020. He was awarded HEN, and HEN is a program where they pay a year of rent. Also, when the Main Street voucher came out, I ushered it his way, and he got picked. So this individual is no longer going to be on the street. He is permanently housed. And what I see in this individual's eyes from the time I met him to the time that I see him now, he is, his life is worth living. He has hope. He has dreams. So it's amazing to see the transformation when we pick them up or when we see them in incarceration, when most of our peers are held in cells where they are let out maybe an hour a day. and you see them flourish and thrive. This individual has hope and dreams. He was a musician before. Now he's looking at doing something of that nature again. But he's no longer homeless, period. So,
Thank you. Ronnie?
I think you know which one I'm going to talk about.
I think so.
So I got a call from one of my DCRs. She's sitting in the audience. Hi, Ezra. There's this guy out at the Albertsons in the middle of winter. It's snowing like crazy out there, and it's cold. I reckon if there was a piece of metal and you wrapped your hand around it and you didn't have a glove, your hand would freeze to that pole. So let's call him Jerry Garcia. I'm a Deadhead fan. So Jerry Garcia is out in the snow and he's hanging out, and Ezra comes along and she's like, hey man, you got to go inside and the police want you to move on. And he says, yeah, I think so, but not. He was completely symptomatic. It was schizophrenia. And she calls me and tells me I need to help this guy because she doesn't know what to do. What do you think? And I was like, I'll go out and check it out. By the time I got there, Jerry Garcia disappeared. So I'm thinking it's just a figment of her imagination because there's nobody there. So then I get another call from Dee. Hi, Dee. She's here in the audience. And she says, I think that you need to go check out this guy, Jerry Garcia. And I was like, why? And she goes, well, he's out in the cold and he's been homeless for a while. Why don't you see if you can't talk to him? So I went out looking for him, and again, Jerry Garcia disappeared. So then I was like, okay, I'm driving, and I see this guy, and I'm like, oh, no, don't tell me it's this guy. I said, because I know Jerry Garcia. I did outreach for 10 years, or 5.5 years, and by this time, he's out there over 10 years, homeless on the street, in his symptoms. And so I invited him into the warm office of crisis response. I said, come on in, Jerry Garcia. I said, we can have a conversation. And he really was out there. He wasn't high, but he was out there. And so I started talking to him about his needs. And I asked him if he remembered me, because I had taken him a set of wool socks with some liners when it was last time it was real cold. And I gave him a down sleeping bag that was donated to me. And I had to hand that to somebody else because he wouldn't come up and see me. He wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't even get in my car. And that was when I was just on my own, no agency behind me, getting him on board. So it took a team. And I'm glad that they're part of my team because we had to get him from the beginning. ID. Where do you get that? He has no funds. I don't know. Am I going to pay $70-something for this guy's ID? No, I go to DSHS. I know where those resources are. So I go to DSHS, $5. It's going to cost him for an ID. He already had one. And it reads his name, Jerry Garcia. That's a joke. So anyway, we get him in. He needs to go into services to try and help him get a line on what's going on in reality. And his reality is kind of like Alice in Wonderland, going down the rabbit hole. So I was like, hey, Jerry Garcia, you think about housing? He's like, well, they won't give it to me. I can't pay for it. I don't have any money. And I said, what if I could help you do that? He says, yeah. Help me do that. And then he's telling everybody else he doesn't want to go into housing. So I'm confused. But he's confused too, because he really doesn't know what reality is right now. And I know he's completely symptomatic. So I'm just walking beside him. I said, hey, you want to be my team member? I said, we make a good team. I said, remember when I used to bring you food? You remember when I used to do this? Yeah, kind of. I was like, okay, Jerry, listen. Get in, we're going to go get you medical, we're going to go do this, we're going to go do that, we're going to do this, but you have to be a part of that. If you don't want it, tell me now. If you think I need it, we went through a trip, and we went through a lot of different avenues trying to get him support. We got the supports in place. Took a long time, but it was a shorter time than that 10 years that he spent out there on that street, because we did it in 4 months. And in that 4 months, he got a permanent housing voucher through CAC. I incorporated all kinds of weapons in getting him supported. Part of that was going to get his application approved for housing. So he signs this application, they put it through, he's denied. Okay, Northwest Justice Project, I got one for you. They came on board. They said, yeah, we can do that. And then with the voucher, it's going to be paid at the 10th of the month. They're telling him that he has to have that paid by the 3rd of the month. If not, he's going to get $100 tacked on to what he already owes for his rent. And I was like, I don't think so. Hey, Northwest Justice, you want to come on board and help me out here? Yeah, sure. Reasonable accommodation. They're great. Make sure you get them. So all this time, too, we struggled with the insurance. And I was knocking on doors. DSHS told me go to this one. And provider one said go to that one. And then I'm going in the circle, and I said, wait, the buck stops here. This is what I talk about when I say I kick down doors. I am not doing this. I shouldn't have to spend 4 hours in this circular motion trying to get him his services. Jerry deserves these services. You're going to give them to him because he deserves them. And Jerry's going like, I'm going to panic right now. And I said, hang on, Jerry, we're going to get through the door. Don't worry, I'm going to bust it down. So Jerry says, okay, cool. So he's learning lessons. You don't just go with the no and leave. You go with the girl, and she'll get you through the doors. So I called up to the healthcare authority, and I'm like, look, I don't know what's going down on your lower levels, but I know what I'm not getting, and I know what he's supposed to have. And I said, so we need to get something in place, get whatever glitch in the computer is kicking him out of the computer, and get him served, because he needs his medications. If he's not on his medications, then we're just going to do this over and over again. And I came on board. I said, there's no revolving door. 0 tolerance for revolving doors. If a process starts, we see it through, we get it done. And now he's in a place that's age appropriate, supported by the management, and he's making friends, and he's thriving, and he's getting his shot every month, and he's worried about it. I got to get my shot. Who's going to take me to get my shot? Because right now we're working on transportation still, because he has a lifetime ban from transit. How do you do that, Jerry? Well, I didn't know that I was supposed to get off the bus, and I got panicked. So they kicked him out of the bus system. So we're working on that. Northwest Justice, hi, you're my friend. Anybody that I talk to, I bring them together on board with, I make my issue their issue. They don't like it much, but I'm like, I'm not going away. Knock, 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 knock. So keep knocking on the doors. Keep opening the doors. Hold them open. Let them do the work. Let them be a partner in that work, and they will excel. He tells me he needs to go grocery shopping. He worries about an electric bill. He worries about rent being paid. And on top of all that, he's got 10 years back pay, Social Security. Are you kidding me? Hello. Let's get it done. He's going to be okay for the rest of his life. I'm going to tell you, because Northwest Justice knows how to get business done.
Thank you, Ronnie and Debbie. Now, those are some really excellent examples of exactly how unique peers are and the amount of work they do to support their program participants and make sure they have what they need and make sure that they're successful in their journey to recovery. Now, we all try and make sure, and peers especially make sure that they provide an individualized approach to that individual, right? Everyone needs different things, and we have to be aware of that, and we have to, support them in the ways that work best for them. But we also have, general things that we know generally work well for people who've experienced trauma. We know the things that might not work so well, right? And this is a question for all of you. What are things that have been helpful to supporting people when they're in crisis, and things that also haven't been helpful that are specific to that peer role? All three of you, whoever wants to start.
I got some stories. I got to stop telling stories. Oh, you think so, huh? Okay. So you like Jerry Garcia? I like him too. He's a pretty cool guy. So some of the things that are very helpful is having somebody that's not overriding you, because things take time and there's always a process, and you can't hurry somebody else's process. You know, like I was telling you earlier, is that you don't set the standard of, here you need to meet this and achieve this. You have to give it time to develop. And so if you're on top of your peer and you're saying, why aren't you doing this? Why isn't this happening? Why isn't that happening? It's not in our time. It's in the client's time. And sometimes that means that you got to let go of the client for a minute, let them kind of process things, and then come back. So I love the team that I work with, because I don't get that from them. I don't get overshadowing and questioning what my work is. When you start questioning the work and you start questioning, that means that you don't have any kind of, you're not holding value for that peer. That peer is very valuable. And I'm going to tell you, they're going to get the work done. And they know what work needs to be done. So they don't need that kind of direction. They need support. Like, they're supporting the client. They need the support from you, saying you're doing a good job, keep it up, what's going on with this person, and just to check in. And then do your supervision. Because everybody needs that, but you need to hold loosely to that peer so the peer can get the work done. And if you're not doing that, then you're doing a disservice for your peers, and you're doing the disservice for your clients.
Yeah. You know, oftentimes when you're working with peers, they go in and out of crisis. You know, I mean, it's a process of recovery. Oftentimes we're working with clinicians. We're partnering with providers to work with their medications, if they need medications, to get that spot where they can handle what's going on with them, you know, and they're able to rise up and do some of this stuff, do some of this work, and start rebuilding. When people, so our peers go on and off in crisis, and oftentimes when I deal with a peer that's going in crisis, I come alongside it. I always have to be face to face with this individual, because they just need someone there. Oftentimes they just need someone there to listen, you know, and just hold that space with them and care. You know, a lot of these peers were treated very poorly. You know, no one cared. Their family has ostracized them for one reason or another. And they don't feel, their self-esteem is like at the bottom, you know. And so oftentimes they just need someone to sit sometimes and just listen, or just to sit with them through that moment. And so what works well with a peer in crisis is just to be there authentically for them and be there for what they need. What hasn't worked well with a peer in crisis is to challenge them during that moment, because they're already on 115. You know, they're already overloaded. And oftentimes what's interesting is that most of our peers, you know, they've been in the system, and as we deal with government agencies and DSHS, and sometimes their benefits go cut off, all of a sudden, I can't get my meds. What am I going to do? And that's a crisis for most of our peers, that are on medication. And we try to navigate and help them through that crisis. Luckily, we have several entities that we can go to. Like, okay, we'll go over here and get a bridging med. You'll be okay. So, but yeah, just with peers in crisis, it's going to go on and off. And just to be there and be supportive and let them know that they're perfectly okay. Mm-hmm. What you're experiencing, it's okay. It will pass. And I'll stay with you.
Thank you. So, Josh, I'm curious, for your perspective, what's been helpful or maybe not helpful to you when you've been in a difficult time?
Well, Debbie brought up a point that I would like to harp on a little bit, and that's in crisis, we do need somebody to talk to and to sit down with, for somebody to listen to us. And that's hard for me because I don't talk very much. I'm very quiet and reserved. But I'm a former caregiver for both the developmentally disabled, and I also worked at a boarding home for the mentally ill. This is before I became mentally ill myself. And sometimes what we need is not only for someone to sit there and to talk to us and listen to us, but at the worst times, we just need somebody to hold our hand. And that's something that I did not receive. But that's all that I have.
Thank you. I think those are all really, really important points to make clear and really remind us in all of our different capacities of what is helpful when folks are going through a difficult time. So I figure while we have an audience full of providers, we should take advantage of it. As far as the history of peers, behavioral health peers, mental health peers, it's relatively new. It's not a terribly long history yet. It will be a very long history, I'm sure. But seeing as it is relatively new, what is the most important thing that providers need to know about working with peers?
I think, and I've talked to the defense counsels about this. We're kind of like the keeper of what's going on with this individual. And often, we get all our HIPAA laws are right in order, but I try to get enough ROIs with each provider and family members or partners over here or partners there, whatever's that peer program that peer is participating in, so we can have an equal exchange of information. So that, because oftentimes for example, there's this pilot program and I have a peer in it, but he doesn't talk much. He's very reserved. But I wanted to give this program a heads up on what's going on with this individual, because oftentimes when he hears voices, when the voices are commanding and very, very, very punishing, he pretends to sleep. And so, a lot of times I would ask, well, how is he doing? Well, he's kind of tired all the time. And so oftentimes I can share that information and say, listen, what's going on with him is his voices are so punishing, he can't even interact with you. He's unable to. And so at least they know going in with this individual and they spend time with him that he's not doing very well. So how do we approach that? Mm-hmm. Defense attorneys, if they're asking information about their client, what I'm seeing, what's going on with them, we have a discussion over that, about what's happening. I had a peer that was going in and out of sobriety. And so, defense needs to know exactly what's going on with that peer in order to help them and guide them through that process and get them the help that they need, more appropriate help that they need. If they need up the care, then let's do that. So us peers, we get to know our class members so well, and we observe them because we spend a lot of time with these peers. Driving, yes. When we drive, we talk. We talk a lot, and there's a lot of information exchanged. And sometimes that information is useful for the providers.
I think that I have a friend that he became my friend. He was a counselor over at Lourdes when I was doing outreach. And one of the things that he told me that I can't ever shake is that I've done more work in a shorter time frame than he's done in 5 years with the same person I'm working with. If that equates to anything, we have our value. And I think that when you're looking for cost savings and you're looking for equity in the care and services being provided, I think that we're a bridge to that. I think that we get things done where others it's taken much longer of time. And if we can give equity to the services to our clients, our peers, that helps them exceed and become successful in their recoveries in a shorter amount of time, I think we're doing something for them, and they recognize that. I still have peers that call me from back in the day. Hey, I'm doing fine. Today's my birthday. They're all, Ronnie, it's your birthday. Happy birthday. I've already got 10 texts from old clients. It's those kind of relationships that are being developed, and that means we're providing service. We're providing a healthy service. We're giving support where support is needed, where before there was no support. So I think that that's the biggest piece. So you guys are the ones we look to help fund us, to help bring about our jobs and make those jobs better. But I think that it's the equity that we bring to the table and the service that we provide for our clients and the bridging that gets them to the places where they need to get healthy. And I think that that has its credence in the work that we do.
Thank you. And Josh, from your perspective, what do providers need to know about working with class members?
Providers.
I know there's a lot, but
Right. Well, I was, for about a year prior to my arrest, and I was showing signs of psychosis and delusion and disorganized thought. That all of this was documented repeatedly by my providers, my psychiatrists, my mental health counselor, and my primary at a facility, Columbia Valley Community Health in Wenatchee. And I think that it's important to observe and also to document, diagnose, prescribe, etc., but also to take the appropriate action. If there are records from there which state Josh's thought pattern is disorganized and impaired, speech is impaired, appearance is disheveled. And this was going on for so long and getting worse and worse. I just wish that my providers would have at least brought up the idea to me of psychiatric hospitalization. But every time they would let me walk out the door. So I think that it's important for providers to take the initiative and to see the situation for what it is. So if their client or patient is having a hard time, they do have some authority to take action. But that's about as much as I have for that question.
Okay, well, thank you. So those are all the questions we have prepared. I'm wondering if we have any questions in the audience for our panelists. Oh, we got one here and then one there.
So can I just flip this around for a second? So at the REACH program, we don't have a sort of like everyone's a case manager. There's no like peer and case manager sort of difference in that. So my question is, how can supervisors support folks who are doing the work? Like, how do we support you all? I mean, there's a lot of talk about the peer support the clients and all the clients, but there's also that need for the peers to have some support too. Like, there's a training opportunities or whatever it is. Like, I just want to hear from you all about like what are the needs of your advocates and how can we as supervisors and administrators support them.
Well, I just happen to have the most amazing supervisor that I've ever had, and I think what makes our program and Thurston Mason special is our team is very, very strong, but we're also allowed the opportunity to learn. So there isn't a lot of, it's pretty much we're kind of in and out. We're traveling, we're taking people places, we're traveling sometimes out of a county for different court hearings, and I think what makes a really good relationship is a supervisor that trusts the process and trusts our work. There isn't a lot of question on. There's three of us in our peer program, and we pretty much have a lot of leeway in how we go about this or what we do. There isn't a lot of question on where are you at, what are you doing, what's going on. For safety reasons, we do tell all our team what we're doing. Like, I'm going to DSHS with class member. I'm going to so they have at least a knowledge of where we're at around. But I think what makes our program special is because of our supervisor, and she just lets us fly. She always offers opportunity for us to learn. She's really into that learning process, because we're learning all the time. With each new peer or class member that we pick up, even from all of us, when we get together and talk, we learn from each other too. So I guess it's just in doing this work is just a huge learning experience, and all of us peers, I think, at least in my program, we're hungry for knowledge, more knowledge about, how better to help our peers, more knowledge about the diagnoses. We're not clinicians, and we never will be. But the more information we have, the more learning experience that we get under our belt, the better off we can help our clients. So,
Ronnie, do you want to respond to that too?
Yeah, I do, because I come at it in a perspective of being over managed, and I've gone from that to being that was micromanaged. Now it's managed. So micromanaging can kill your peer, and your peer will quit, period. You need to have oversight, yes. But the peers know what to do with other peers. They know how to engage. They know how to do all those parts. Don't delve into their role and try to understand it, because you're not going to wrap your head around it much. But the biggest part is the trainings. the being able to get to the conferences. Because when peers get together and they're talking, they're sharing information and they're learning from one another, as well as when you're supervising a peer and that peer is overwhelmed, you have to be able to understand that peer is getting overwhelmed. And we produce more work when we're healthy. And I have a great boss. How you doing, Ronnie? And he pats me on my back. I'm good. And as long as I'm showing thumbs up, but if he comes up to me and says, hey, you don't look so good today, I'm like, God, he noticed, you know? And that's like 100%. I'm better because he noticed. And my boss is busy all the time. He doesn't have time to worry about me, so I have to stay in my wellness. And how I do that is I have probably about 5 more bosses around me. And if I need to go talk to somebody, I can go talk to somebody. But we have to stay in our wellness. And in order for us to stay in our wellness, we have to have understanding around that wellness. So if we become overwhelmed, like we've been re-traumatized by someone who's going through crisis and trauma, and you need to give us a break for a minute so that we can kind of disengage from that. And when you can recognize those things and you can recognize that there's been this really heavy duty engagement, give time to recover from that and then move on to the next. But if you've got them so inundated with micromanaging, you have to have this, and you're constantly beating your peers down because they didn't accomplish this, that, or another, then you're mismanaging your peer. You need to let your peer fly. We have wings. We make magic happen.
Yes.
You know, my question is, I have some clients that I think would really benefit from peer support. How do I find or engage the right peer for them? And so I got it. And so this is kind of new territory.
Is this mental health?
It could be mental health. I mean, we're here on Trueblood, but a lot of my clients are co-occurring.
You a therapist?
No, I'm a
Defense attorney. So peers are hired specifically for mental health support, and they're usually done through those agencies. So if you really want to talk about stuff like that, there are some individual organizations that are peer run, and you can reach out to them. But my suggestion would be get a hold of Patty Marshall over at Healthcare Authority. I got her number. See me after this, and I'll be happy to hook you up. And then there's Stephanie Lane. She does a lot of the training stuff. And it's important to get in contact with both of those. That way you know what's going on. So I'll make sure that you get those numbers before the day ends. Just hit me up. I'll get you in touch.
Okay, yes. That is a big
Can
question.
you repeat that? I didn't hear all of that. I'm sorry.
Do you want me to repeat it? I believe the question was, if you could make a change to the system to improve the behavioral health system, what would it be? Is that right? Okay.
You want to go?
More peers. I mean, you know, honestly,
Yes.
you know, peers can come in where clinicians can't, because oftentimes a peer, has had several clinicians in their life that they've never experienced any recovery or positive feedback or what have you, and so peers can come in and break down barriers, help the class members understand that, and help them on that journey of discovering where the best fit for them is, because it's not, what works for one doesn't work for all, So having more access to peers in all the levels, Trueblood is very specific, but I see, I see the experience of peer work going, much further. into the medical field, behavioral health field, but also, in the substance use field, because, there's nothing like looking someone in the eye that has been through that and has walked that journey and is now on the other side and has discovered freedom. And there's nothing like it, because I remember when someone approached me, and then I finally thought, I have a little bit of hope here. If she could do it, maybe I can. So I would just say more peers you'd probably have better outcomes.
Yeah, I keep telling my boss I need 5 more of me. He gave me 1 part-time one. Pretty disappointed these days about that. Just saying. He's going to get me after this, I'm sure. So it's not just that. It's being trauma-informed. I think that changed a lot about me anyway. Understanding ACEs, having all of your people that's working with you to understand those bits and pieces of what our class members have been through, and actually doing the work behind trauma-informed. Not just saying the words, not just pretending like you understand what it is, but actually living it. When I see my peer, I don't judge. And a lot of times we forget that there's cultural importance. There's trauma information that we need to know about so that we can be careful and mindful not to re-trigger someone that's still very open wounded by the system, and the system just continues to dig that hole bigger and it bleeds a little bit more. So I think that when we're informed about how we treat people, just in general, attitude of gratitude, I'm glad you're here. Would you like to have a seat? Can I get you something to drink? Make it available to them. Make them feel welcome. Because if you don't, it's just another cold office that they've walked into. And when you meet them where they're at, instead of expecting them to meet you where you think they should be at, that it's an important piece. I think that expectation is like the worst nightmare-ish weed you can grow in your garden of life, because expectation leads to disappointment. You're going to be more disappointed about my peer than I ever could be, because you expect this part to happen, and then when it doesn't, you're disappointed in me. Don't be disappointed in me. Just don't set the bar. Don't set that expectation. And move up to a higher place. Allow that to happen. You need to give us more hours, because I can't do everything in 4 hours that I'm allowed. Sometimes it goes beyond that when I'm trying to get medication for somebody because the insurance just stopped, and I'm working with the insurance, trying to get the insurance to cover the medication that he can't afford in the beginning. And then I'm fighting with getting those doors open, and I'm still on the phone, I'm still with my peer, and I'm still not getting the result that we need 4 hours later, and I need to go off the clock. I'm staying until 8 until it's done. And I eat those hours. I'm not supposed to be there. I'm supposed to be done. So open those up. Open the hours up. If it takes time to get the thing done, let the thing get done. But stop limiting us. Because when you limit us, our success rate goes down.
Thank you.
I also wanted to add, include your peer in your care team. You know, it's really important because, again, we're not clinical, but we just know some of the nuances you will not see and ever experience with that peer.
I'll take a hint that I should become a peer after this. Asking me what should be changed in the behavioral health system is be very hard for me to answer because there's so much. I could write a 500-page book on that, but I think that it should that there needs to be accountability, compassion, education, and also consistency, because there are so many laws that pertain to mental health and also criminal law, but it's some of it can be so subjective where it should be objective, and so many of the laws are subject to interpretation, and this goes for law enforcement, attorneys, and judges. We're all human, and that's all I have to say.
And what a great note to end it on. I think we're out of time, but actually, Lisa, tell me if we have a few more minutes. We have a few more minutes? Great. Dan.
Quick question. I apologize in advance if you're first of all, are peer services Medicaid reimbursable in Washington? Yeah, they are. So that's a big benefit. Is there peer certification in Washington?
Yes.
Okay, so you all went through that certification process.
She and I did, and I don't think you did.
Not yet.
That's available. I'm helping him. I'm getting there. I know, I'm trying to get you there. Don't worry, I'm working with you.
Any other questions from the audience? Yeah.
Well, I don't know if it's a question, but what she said. Your name's Ronnie, right?
Ronnie, yeah.
Ronnie said, give us more than 4 hours. And that's one of the big, you were talking about Medicaid reimbursement. 4 hours is the Medicaid reimbursement. And you only get that 4 hours. So what does our peer do when they are stuck? Because this happens constantly.
Yes.
This happens every single day. And if you're going to have peers, and the value of the peer is that the peer is dedicated to stay there until the job is done. I manage a Trueblood program in Lewis County and 5 counties southwest, and my peers are the most dedicated employees I've ever had in 50 years of work. And every one of them, I didn't say this, nobody heard this, but they all work overtime and don't get paid for it. They work out of their house, they get up early in the morning and they make their phone calls, they go to work at night, and they get their production numbers up at nighttime when they go, because they don't have time to do it when they should. Of course, should be doing it during work time. These are all things that just have to change if we're going to have a really successful Trueblood program. We've got to give the time to our peers to get their work done, and because the peer is what runs Trueblood. That is the motor that runs the car. Without the peers, the car isn't going anywhere.
It's just going to be that revolving door over and over again. We hope to stop that. I'm sorry.
We hope to stop that. So they get so many supports in place, but there's not enough supports after the services are gone and they're not eligible for this or for that anymore, but they still need those services or they still need the support. And that's one of the things that the peer does, is tries to implement all those supports. When we get a peer and we're working with a peer, it's about getting all those things in place so that when we pull back, they are continued to be supported. And if we're not given that, those hours that it takes to get that done, you're doing a disservice because it becomes that revolving door again. So you have to complete whatever it is, whatever track you're on, regardless of what time it takes. Because if I leave and say, I'm done, going home, off the clock now, and they're still hanging there, they're going to fall, and they're not going to be supported through whatever they are going through at that point, and it's going to have to start all over again. So the time I put in is relatively worthless. But if I complete something and get it done, then that support is in place. So then it's the next support, then it's the next one. Once we get all those pieces put in place, that peer is good because they've learned how to be advocating. They've learned how to be empowered, inspire themselves. Yeah, if Ronnie was here, this would have happened. I would have been able to do this. I had a blind girl get on a bus, leave Pasco to go get into recovery services, detox in Yakima. She's blind. She's never been there, never been out of Pasco because she knows it. But she got to Yakima, and she called me. I've been in recovery for the last 4 days. Can you come get me? And I'm like, how'd you get there? The bus. And I'm like, you better get on the bus and come back home because I'm not coming to get you. You got your blind self there. You get your blind self back. You know, hey, but I'll come pick you up at the Vine. I'll pick you up in Richland if you can get to Richland. She got to Richland. That's empowerment. They learn that from us, and then they pass it on, which is really cool because they're doing my role out there by themselves. It's a wonderful thing. When we do the work well, it is extended out by the person that we do that work with. So, gracias, señor.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, yes.
I'm kind of curious in your roles, do you ever, interact? I love recovery stories. I use recovery stories all day. We also need recovery for criminal justice system, not just for people who are charged. How do we change the behavior of
Could you repeat the question so I get a good hear it?
Can you talk about you have interactions with police, you have interactions with prosecutors, and how do we bring some recovery to the systems that are, I keep watching the numbers and hoping that we see the referral numbers keep level up with increase, and I don't see it happening. So I see recovery happening for individuals, I don't see recovery happening for the system.
I do. Okay. You sure?
So really, really quick, I'm going to try and repeat the question so that folks can hear it. I believe Kevin's question was, there's recovery for the mental health system, behavioral health system, but is there recovery for the criminal justice system? And what are we doing about recovery in that system? Is that kind of it, Kevin?
Prosecutors. Okay. So one of the really good things about the police department and all that is that our police officers are learning to use CIT. Don't ask me what that means. Okay, thank you very much. But they're learning how they impact peers when they come up on them, and how not to create more of an issue, because when you show up with a badge, that's scary. But they're learning how to work with people that have mental illness, and I think that that's a good start. When I was doing outreach, I was seemingly talking to prosecutors and attorneys and judges, and I just went in as the advocate. And what was really kind of cool is that when I went in with a plan, the judge went with it, and the attorney kind of stepped off to the side, and the prosecutor kind of was listening and curious as to who I was and why I was there. So I think that when you have peers in a courtroom, it works, because now you got somebody with mental illness and you're walking them through that process. But that's before they become a class member. They just got charged with a DUI, but they were full on in their addiction and mental health symptoms. But I think that the peer role could be implemented in many places, but we would have to call it different names. So we can call it a court liaison or something of that nature, someone that walks with, because I know that Judge Butler wanted to hire me. She just didn't have the funding. And I told her I'd work for free, and she said, no, I can't have you do that. But I went through her court many times, and in the work that I was doing at that time, I was a community health worker, doing the same work I'm doing as a peer. And she saw the worth in that, and she excused all his fines and fees. That was over $6,000. And he was like, man, I can't believe that happened. I said, but you're in recovery. He went into clean and sober housing, supported housing, all these other things. I can tell you this wonderful story, but I'm not. But bottom line is that she saw the worth and she wanted to use it, but she didn't have the opportunity to put the funding there. So it's about funding.
For me, I think inviting everybody to the table. Oftentimes when I work with, actually the prosecutor talks to me often when I'm in court with my peer and gets my take on what's going on, because, where they're at. But basically, I talk to police officers, defense attorneys, prosecutors, bringing them all into the table about what peer services are about and how it can be beneficial in different formats for everyone. And oftentimes I talk a lot about our peer role to folks that, that are surrounded by that have to do with that, because I exchange information with them, they exchange information with me, and we're all discussing about the same thing, about the recovery of this certain individual. And I think I'm seeing a shift. I am actually seeing a shift in the local police departments. There and the local. We work with Thurston County. I'm seeing that shift. It's shifting. Judges, they're shifting. They're starting to understand the significance of this. People with severe mental illness, they ended up in the criminal justice system because of their mental illness or something related to that. And that their understanding, this understanding is growing. That's what I see. It's going to continue to grow, because we all know that it's unfortunate that most of our class members, and I was a class member, end up where they're at. And with no understanding, no resources, no help. So I don't know if that answers your question, but really a lot of times it's just inviting all the partners, the players into the table and having open discussion.
Just my 2 cents briefly, as a class member and a peer. As I said before, I think that as far as the criminal justice system, I would like to see education, but also more consistency. I've dealt with the Wenatchee Police Department on both ends of the spectrum. As a care provider at the boarding home for the mentally ill, I have called the police. This is prior to my arrest. I had called the police to report assaults on other residents and other staff by residents, sometimes using weapons. And out of the probably 10 times that I called the police, there was only one arrest. And the resident was released from jail about 3 days later and came back to the boarding home. And then my case, I was arrested, and I spent almost 13 months in jail. And then also, lastly, some consistency within the prosecutorial field, because the Chelan County prosecutor charged me with 7 Class A felonies. Yet my parents consulted with the Douglas County prosecutor, which is adjacent to Chelan County. He said that this prosecutor said that he would not have charged me that way, and would have instead tried to get me immediate psychiatric hospitalization. So there's just so much of an imbalance in the enforcement, in the interpretation of our laws.
Any last questions? Okay. Well, thank you all for being great audience members, and thank you so much to our 3 panelists for your stories, your courage, and your wisdom. Thank you for all that you shared. I think this was a really great way to start our final day together and really recenter us on the experience of class members and the work that's happening on the ground. So thank you.
This panel discussion was conducted at the Trueblood Diversion Services Summit. For additional information and resources, please visit www.prainc.com. This video was produced by Policy Research Associates. Use of footage or audio from this video without permission is prohibited.